So hey everyone, my name is Shahir and I am joined by Lydia today, and we will be kicking off our workshop series for this year, starting with the Autodesk Fusion 360 workshop. Before I hand it off to Lydia, I just wanted to speak a bit more about UTDL and what we've been doing and what we will be doing throughout the year. So UTDL hosts CAD-related workshops and CAD-related events throughout the year. We recently had our first mini event last September, and we will be hosting another one during this November reading week. So keep an eye out for that. We also have our major annual design-a-thon this coming February, and all of our events have these really cool prizes ranging from either cash prizes, 3D printers, and many more. So if you're really interested in designing and whatnot, then feel free to look out for our UTDL Facebook and Instagram page for updates on our events and our design-a-thon. We also, as you follow along with Lydia during this workshop, you can go look through her aid sheet, which will be posted in the chat below. And also, as you may know, we have a raffle that you can enter for, and with the chance to win, I believe, a $25 Amazon gift card. So if you're interested, feel free to sign up in the link that I'll be posting below. With that out of the way, I'd like to hand it off to Lydia. And Lydia, you can take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Shahir. So welcome to the beginners workshop for Fusion 360. So I'll just be going over the basics of Fusion 360. It'll be just a basic overview so you can get familiar with the software and how to use it, so that when you participate in our design-a-thon in the second semester, you will have the skills that you'll need to be successful in the competition. So this is perfect for beginners. So if you don't have any experience, no worries at all. We'll go through all the basic things that you'll need to know. So to begin, first you will need to download Fusion 360 if you haven't done so already. If you are a student here at the University of Toronto, you do get Fusion 360 for free. So you can go to the website I have here and you can download the software. However, if you don't already have it on your computer, it might take a little while for the verification process to be set up. They need to verify that you're actually a student here. So what we will do instead is we can go ahead and start with the free trial. So I've put the link in the chat. So you can use the free trial for the purpose of following along for the project that we'll work on later on today. But then after today, you can just switch your account over to your UToronto one and you'll have free access for the time that you're a student here. So you can click the link, you can follow all of the prompts, and while the download is happening, I'll go over just a basic overview of Fusion 360. And by the time I finish that, your software should be downloaded and then we can get started with the project. All right, so we'll start off with first the user interface. So this is how Fusion 360 will look like when you open up the software. So once you have it downloaded, it will look something like this. And so there are about 5 to 6 key spaces that you'll be working with, and they are important to kind of familiarize yourself with. If you have any questions while I'm explaining anything, feel free to put your questions in the chat and I'll be more than happy to answer them. So if we start at the top, highlighted with the green box, you have something called the toolbar. So this is what contains all of the functions and commands that Fusion 360 has. They've been categorized into different categories. So you can see that there's create, modify, assemble, construct, inspect, insert, and select. So if you click on those or you hover your mouse over that, you'll get more options. And Fusion 360 does a great job with explaining exactly what everything does. As you are starting with using the software, the only thing you'll really need to use are the things under the create menu. So don't worry too much about anything else. The create menu will have almost everything you need. And then to the right of that, you have something called the view cube. So that's what you'll use to orient yourself around your model. So you can use it to rotate your model and take a look at it through different viewpoints. The work plane or the workspace is the big open area when you have Fusion 360 open. So this is where you'll begin creating your 3D models. At the very bottom, you have something that you can see under the purple box, and those are more commands that allow you to rotate, zoom, other pan controls, and things like that. All right. Welcome to those of you who just joined. I've just been going over the user interface. So if you don't have Fusion 360 downloaded, I have put the link in the chat so you can have access to the free trial to get you started for when we work on a project together later on today. The last part of the user interface is highlighted in red, and that's to change the workspace. So Fusion 360 allows you to do a lot more than just do 3D modeling. So if you take more advanced workshops, you'll be working more with the different workspaces. But for the purpose of creating basic 3D models, you just need to know the design workspace, and that's the default. The last thing is at the very bottom, and that's in blue, and that is the history bar. So whenever you do something new in Fusion 360, it saves it, so you can always go back to see what you've done in the past. So this entire user interface will make more sense once we get started on working on our model together. All right, so Fusion 360 has these things called folders and projects, which is how you save your files. The great thing about Fusion 360 is that you'll be able to work with multiple people on the same model at the same time. So this is perfect for our design-a-thons. If you're working with your friends, you all can work together on the same model. And so you'll do that by saving it into different projects. And once again, we'll go over that later on today. So if you've never done any 3D modeling before, it's very helpful if you follow this kind of step-by-step process so that you can efficiently create the models that you would like for whatever design you are making. So the great thing with 3D design is that there's no one way to do it. However, if you want to get started, I do suggest following this little algorithm. So it starts off with first creating sketches. The next thing are dimensions. Third, we have extrusions, then we have cutouts, and then lastly, we have colors and appearances. So we'll go through each of the 5 steps in this algorithm together just through the slides, and then we'll put it into practice later. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. All right, so let's get started with sketches. So sketching is where your design starts. So this is where you create a detailed outline of the base or general shape of your model. So for example, if you were 3D modeling a basic cube, you would sketch a square because that's the base outline of the cube. So the line tools under the sketch command come in very different shapes. So you have rectangles, squares, different polygons. You can also have text that you can sketch out as well. You can sketch circles and things like that. And so you have pretty much free range for whatever you are trying to design. So you can see that the create sketch function or command is located under the create tab or the create menu. And you can see that if you hover your mouse over, Fusion 360 will give you a detailed explanation of all the things you can do with that function. So this first step in creating your 3D models are making sketches. So here you can take a look at the different shapes in the drop-down menu, and we'll see more when we work on our model. So the second step in the algorithm are dimensions. So dimensions make sure that your sketch is dimensionally accurate. There are various ways that you can work on dimensions, and I'll show you the most straightforward and intuitive way to make your dimensions. And so if you're given, or you have to design something that is a specific size, you will define the dimensions. So those are like the length, the width, and the height using the dimension tool. So you typically dimension your sketches and then you move on to the next step afterwards. So the next step are extrusions. So extrusions allow you to create a body from a sketch. So we started with our sketches, we dimensioned them so that they were accurate. And now if we use the extrusion function, you'll be able to create a body from it. So for example, if you're extruding a square that you sketched, you would create a cube or rectangular prism once you use the extrusion function. And you can see in the animation here how that works. There are sketches on both the right and on the left. And the body is being created. So the extrusion menu has a lot of different functions. And so this looks like a lot of words that might be a little bit confusing. If you click on the links that I've provided in the handout, you'll see more information about extrusions, but the Fusion 360 actually gives you these detailed explanations as you're going through your models. So depending on what you're making, using certain functions and certain operations will be helpful. So when we actually work on our models, we'll get to play around with this a little bit more, but these are just the more detailed extrusions. The great thing with Fusion 360 is that it's pretty smart in the sense that if you put in certain values, it's able to adjust everything for you, so you don't have to worry about dealing with all of these different types of operations. The next thing are cutouts. So cutouts do the opposite things that extrusions do. So while extrusions build up a body, cutouts will remove portions of the body. So when you use the extrusion function, you usually use a positive value to make your body grow. But because we want to remove parts of the body that we've created, we use negative values. And then there's an operation called cut. So we'll see more of that later on, but it allows you to remove bodies. So for example, if you wanted to make a cup, you will first extrude a cylinder shape, and then you'll cut out a smaller cylinder in the middle. All right, and then the very last thing are colors and appearances. So Fusion 360 allows you to change the color of whatever you design. And not only can you change the color, but you can also change the material. So you can have a standard plastic type of a material of any color that you'd like, or you can choose various different types of metals. You can also choose wood grains. You have a ton of options that you can choose from so that your design can look more realistic and can just be more visually appealing. So this is also a great thing to have or to know how to do for our design-a-thons, just so that you can stand out from everyone else if you have a nice visually looking model for your design. All right, so we went over a brief introduction of some of the key functions that you'll need when you're creating your designs. So now we will get started on working on our design project. So we'll be implementing all of the steps that we covered so that we can create our models. And then you can start practicing and you get more experience with using Fusion 360. So if you can open up Fusion 360, and then we'll get started. I'll give you all about a minute and a half to get everything opened up, and then we can get started. All right, so let's get started on working on the design project. If at any point you want me to slow down, just let me know in the chat, or if you want me to repeat a step, I'll be more than happy to slow down and go back so that you can understand exactly what we're doing. So here you have your Fusion 360 opened up. You should be able to see my workspace as well. If you're having any difficulty seeing it, just let me know in the chat and I can correct that. And so what we'll start with doing is creating our projects. So what you'll do is click on the 3x3 dots that you'll see in the top left-hand corner. And then you'll have a list of different projects. So click on new project, and that will create a new project, and you can title it whatever you'd like to do, or whatever you like to title your project. So if you're working on the design-a-thon, you might call it that, so that you can have, and you can put all of your design-a-thon related things in that project. Alrighty, so once you've created your project, you can click on X, and it will take you back to your workspace. So once again, that I just clicked on the 3x3 dots in the top left-hand corner, clicked on new project, and then once I clicked on new project, it prompted me to give it a title. I gave it a very simple title, and then I press X to close this panel. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is save our work. So I like to save after every step, or maybe every 20 minutes of working. Just like with what you do with a Word document, you want to make sure you always save your work so that you don't lose anything. Fusion 360 is great because a lot of your work saves on the cloud, but I always like to be extra safe and save my work as well. So if you click on save, it'll ask you to give your design a title. So we'll be designing a pencil holder, so you can just call it pencil holder or anything that you'd like. After you give your project or your design a name, it will ask for the location. So you can click on the drop-down arrow right over here that my mouse is hovering over, and then you'll see all of your projects that you have. So I'll click on the project that we just created earlier on, and it will save that work to that project. And then I'll click on save. Right, so you'll notice that now you have your name of your design, and then you have something that says V1. So that just means this is your first version. Every single time you save on Fusion 360, you will get a new version of your work. And the great thing about that is that if you deleted something in version 1, but now you're in version 5 of your work, you can always go back to the previous version just to get back the work that you did earlier on. All right, so now let's get started with making our model. Once again, if you have any questions, just let me know in the chat. So the first thing we're going to do is create our sketch, because that's step 1 in our algorithm. And so what I'll do is click on top view. When you create a sketch, you want to choose a plane on your workspace to sketch on. So I'm going to choose the top view. And you'll see that now your entire workspace gets reoriented. Now what I'll do is click on create sketch. So that is that plus sign right over here that my mouse is hovering on beside the word design. If you hover your mouse over it, it will say create sketch, and it'll give you a description of exactly what this command does. So we'll just click on that. So once again, I've just clicked on create sketch over here under the create menu. And then I will select this square that shows up on my screen. So selecting this just reassures that I'm actually going to be sketching on the top view. Okay, so now you can see all the various shapes that we can sketch out. So if you click on the create drop-down menu here, you'll be able to see more shapes that you can also sketch out. And within each shape, you have various options. So this is one of the things that, even though there are descriptions for each of the various types of options, so if we take a look at rectangles, there's different types of rectangles you can sketch out. The best way to actually understand fully how each type of rectangle works is to just try them out. So it takes a little bit of practice to figure out which one works best. But once you figure out which one works best, depending on the scenario, it becomes really quickly from there on. So I suggest that after this session, you can go back and you can work on creating the same model and testing out different shapes and different types of variations within the shapes, just so that you can get familiar with it. So I'm going to use the center rectangle for this. So I'm just going to click on center rectangle. And then I'm going to click on the origin. It's very important that when you're creating any design in Fusion 360 that you start at the origin so that you can lock your design in place on the workspace. So once again, I just went to the create drop-down menu. I hovered my mouse over rectangle and I clicked on center rectangle. Now I'm going to hover my mouse over the origin, which is the intersection of the green and red lines. And I'm going to click once, extend my mouse out a little bit, and then click again to secure it in place. So I'll do that again. Create rectangle, center rectangle, click once in the origin, drag my mouse out a little bit, and then click again to secure it in place. Now what we want to do is step 2 of our algorithm, which are the dimensions. So what we will do is click on the dimension tool. So if you hover your mouse over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces away from the first function over here, the line tool, it will say sketch dimensions. If you hover your mouse over it, we're going to click on that. And this is the dimensioning tool. So this will give your design the dimensions that you want. So let's first work with defining this side length over here. So what we'll do is click once, drag our mouse out a little bit, and click again. Now we want our pencil holder to be 90 millimeters. So all we will do is type 90 and then hit enter on our keyboard. So once again, I clicked on the sketch dimension tool. I clicked on the side length that I wanted to dimension. I dragged my mouse out a little bit. I clicked again, and then I typed in the value of 90. Fusion 360 automatically has the dimension set to millimeters. And if you want to change that, you can always change that in your settings. Now let's dimension this side length. So our sketch dimension tool is already selected still. And you know that because it's highlighted in blue. You can always click it again if you want to just be sure. And so once again, you'll click on the side length you want to dimension, drag your mouse out just a little bit, and then click again. And this side length, we want it to be 90 as well. All right, so if you want to ever change any of your dimensions, you can always double click and you can change the values if you'd like. So if you want it to be a little bit wider, let's say you want it to be 100, you can change it to be 100. And if you wanted this to be 70, or you want it to not be as far out, you can also change that as well. Alrighty, so you can change the values to this, or you can keep them as you originally had them. I just want to show you how you can change your dimensions so that it better fits exactly what you're trying to make. Once you're done adding your dimensions, you can just click finish sketch. So now we've completed the first 2 steps of our algorithm, and the third step is to extrude. So you can do that by clicking on the extrude function right beside create sketch. And you can see that same animation that I showed you earlier on appear, along with a description of what exactly an extrusion does. So let's click on that. Now our sketch has already been selected. However, if your rectangle that you sketched out is not blue, just click on it and it will select it. Now we want to make our actual body, so we will give this a specific distance. So let's extrude this out to about 70, or let's extrude out to about 50 millimeters. So just type in 50. And if you want to see how that looks like, you can click on the view cube and you can move it around and you can see how that looks to see if that's the height that you would like it to be. if you're given a specific value, you can also use that as well. So once you've typed in your value and you're good to go, just click OK. So once again, what I did was I went to extrude. My sketch was already selected. And then I changed the distance in the menu to 50 millimeters. And then I selected OK. And if I want to see this in a view that gives you more detail, just click on the home button beside the view cube. And now you can see everything from a better angle. So let's save what we've done so far. So let's click on save. It'll be the same floppy disk that you're familiar with seeing in Microsoft Word and on PowerPoint and things like that. And Fusion 360 will ask you if you would like to give it a description. So this is helpful if you're working with other people. They might want to know what's significant about this version of your model. But if you're just working by yourself, you can keep it as user saved. So before we move on to our next step, let's take a look at our history bar. So I mentioned at the very beginning that there is a history bar that shows all the different functions and all the different steps that you worked on to create your model. So here at the bottom, you can see that there is a sketch feature over here showing that we created a sketch first. And then there's an extrusion icon showing that we created or we did an extrusion next. So this will continue to grow when we do more and more steps. So to create the pencil holder that I showed earlier on, there were some cutouts. So let's create the cutouts together. So what we'll do is click on the top face because that's the surface we want to sketch on, and then we'll click on Create Sketch again. So you can sketch multiple times when you're creating designs. It does not have to be just right at the beginning. Usually steps 1 and 2, you go back, steps 1 to 4 actually of the algorithm, you go back and forth until you complete your design. And then you typically do step 5 of the algorithm last. So we're going back to creating a sketch so that we can create cutouts. So once again, I selected the top of the rectangular prism and then I clicked on Create Sketch. So I want to make rectangular cutouts. So I'm just going to click on the rectangle over here. You can also explore more shapes if that's something that you're interested in. If you want to do circular cutouts, you can feel free to do that as well. But I'm just going to do basic rectangular cutouts. So I'm just going to click on this 2-point rectangle. And then I'm going to place 2 rectangles on here. So I have 2 cutouts. So I'm going to click once, drag my mouse out a little bit, and then click again. And my rectangular sketch feature is still locked in. As you can see, it's still highlighted as blue. So I'm going to make another rectangle over here. Now to get rid of this rectangular sketch icon or the sketch feature, because I no longer want that, I can either go straight to dimensions if I want to dimension my rectangles, or I can press escape on my keyboard and it will now release me from having to continue to make rectangles. So now what you can do is you can dimension these rectangles to be specific sizes if that's something that's important. Or you can just, if your dimensions are not significant for this, you can skip that step. So I'm going to do a few dimensions just so that we can get more practice with using this tool. So I'll click on Sketch Dimensions again. And I want this rectangle at the back of my pencil holder to be equal distances away from the edge of the larger rectangular prism that we extruded earlier on. So what I'm going to do first is click on one edge of the rectangle that I just sketched. And then I'll click on the edge of the rectangular prism. Now I'll drag my mouse out and I will make each side have a distance of 1 centimeter away, so 10 millimeters away from the actual base of our pencil holder. So I'll type in 10 and I'll press enter. So once again, I clicked on sketch dimension. I'm going to click on the edge of the rectangle that we just created, and then the edge of the rectangular prism. Drag my mouse over, click again, and then type in 10. Alrighty, so if you want me to go back and show that again, feel free to let me know. It doesn't matter which side you click on first. Yeah, that doesn't matter at all. That's just what I ended up doing, but the order that you click for creating your dimensions does not matter. All right, so I think I'm okay with leaving the other rectangle the way it is, but you can dimension all of these edges if you would like to, just so that you can have a neater pencil holder with that's equal distances away from the actual base of it, if that's something that's important. Because I am done with creating my sketches and I'm done with dimensioning, I'm going to click on Finish Sketch. And then I'm going to save my work again. Now what we want to do is cut out these rectangles that we created so we can actually store things inside of our model. So what we'll do is click on Extrude. And we need to select exactly what we want to extrude. We actually want to cut the parts out, but if you recall from earlier on, I mentioned that it's similar, you still have to use the extrusion feature, but we will change the values and the parameters so that Fusion 360 knows that we want to create a cut. So the profiles I will select are the rectangles we just sketched. And then I'll change the distance to a negative distance. So I'm going to change the distance to -35. Now you can see that the arrows are now facing downwards. They were originally facing upwards, and you can kind of see through your model and you can see the cutout being formed. You'll also see that the operation here changed to cut. It was originally at join, but as soon as you put in a negative value, as I mentioned, Fusion 360 is kind of smart, so it's able to figure out that you want to cut something out or create a cutout. If for whatever reason that did not happen when you changed your values, just click on Operation, the drop-down menu, and select Cut. So I'll do that once again. I'm going to click on Extrude, and that is beside the Create Sketch icon. I'm going to select the rectangles we sketched out. So I'm just simply clicking on them. And then for distance here, I'm going to change the value to a negative value. And then the operation will change to cut. Once you've done that, you can click on OK. And now you'll see you have your cutouts. You can click on the cube and rotate your model. And you can see now the cutouts as well. And now we are almost done with our model. So if you take a look at your history bar, you can see that now you have 2 more items added. It shows that we created a sketch again and that we did another extrusion as well. If you needed to go back to, let's say, for example, you want to make this extrusion or this cut deeper, you can go back to your history, right-click on the step in which you created the cutout, and then you'll see something called Edit Feature. So once again, I right-clicked on the icon relating to the cutout that I created in my history bar, and I'm going to select Edit Feature. And then your Edit Feature menu will pop up, and so you can change the value. So for example, if you wanted it to be -40, you can do that there, and any other changes that you'd like to be made. All right, so the next thing we're going to do now is sketch your name. You can choose whether you want to use your name or you can use anything else that's of significance that you'd like to be written on your model. So I'm going to do it on this front face over here. So I'm going to click on that front face. And as always, we're going to go back to the basis of or the first step of our little algorithm that we came up with, and that is creating a sketch. Now I'm going to use the pan feature over here at the bottom above the history bar just to move my workspace over a bit. And then I'm going to click on the create drop-down menu, and I'm going to select text. So once again, all I did was click on the create drop-down menu, and I went down a little bit more than halfway down the menu, and I clicked on text. Now what I'm going to do is trace out the area that I want to put the text. So I'm going to click once, drag my mouse over a little bit, and then I will click again. And then now you can put in your text. So you can put in whatever you'd like to put in. So it could be your name, your initials, or something that's of significance to you. Maybe the discipline that you're in, you might want to put that on there. And then you can play around with the font as well. So it has the same fonts that you're familiar with from Google Docs or Microsoft Word. You can change the height of the text as well. If you like to increase the spacing of the text, you can do that as well. You can move this menu around if it's in your way. So you can choose if you want to maybe center your text a bit. And then you can click on OK once you're done. Okay, so I'll give you all a few more seconds to play around with the fonts that you'd like to do for your text on the front, or you can choose a different surface on your model as well. If you wanted to put your name or whatever you choose to write on the top surface, you can do that as well. If you wanted to put it on maybe the sides, you can do that as well. You're not limited in the position in which you can put this. All right, so now that you've finished writing the name or the saying or whatever you chose to write, you can click on finish. And then we're going to move on to creating the extrusion. So as you can see, this is kind of a repetitive pattern starting with sketches. Then you add dimensions. In this case, the dimensioning was more so choosing the text or the size of the text and the font and things like that. Then you move on to extrusions or cutouts, and then we'll be approaching our very last step shortly. So we're going to click on extrude. And then you can choose the distance. So what will be helpful is if you use your view cube and rotate your cube a little bit so that you can better see what's going to happen with your text. So if you want your text to stick out of the model, use a positive value in your distance. So something small like 2 millimeters. Oops, I think I might have selected the incorrect surface, which is very common to happen. So I'm just going to click on the X to unselect the work and then make sure I select only my text. So if you ever realize that you selected the incorrect surface, like what I did, you can just click on the X beside what you have selected, and then ensure that you click on the correct thing that you like. Okay, so if you'd like your text to stick out, you'll choose a positive distance for your value. And you can see that the operation automatically goes to join. So your text will be attached to the pencil holder. Or if you want your text to be engraved, you can use a negative value. All right, so for me, I want the text to be sticking out, so I will use a positive value, but you can also see once you put in your negative value, the operation changes to cut because this is an example of a cutout. All right, so I'm going to click on OK. I'm going to go back to my home view by clicking on the home beside the view cube, and then I will click on save. Once again, it's going to ask for a version description, and I'm just going to leave it as user saved. But if you're working with multiple people, I suggest that you put a more detailed description. Okay, so now let's move on to the fifth step of our algorithm. So that is changing the appearance and the color. So what you'll do is click on Modify. That's beside the Create menu. And you'll click on Appearance. So once again, in case you missed that, I clicked on the Modify menu. So that's beside Create, which is where we spend most of our time. And then I selected Appearance. So Appearance is near the bottom of the menu. And it has a color wheel beside it. Okay, so an appearance menu will come up, and so you'll be able to see that there are a lot of different types of materials and colors you can choose from. So I'm going to go with a plastic. And so when you click or when you select your material, you just click on it and you drag it over to your model, and then you can see that there's been a change. So if you don't want to do a plastic and you want to do wood, you can open up the wood folder, and then you can click and drag over the wood finish that's of interest to you. The reason why I decided to go with the ABS plastic was because I want to be able to change the color, and it's easier to do that with a white base. So what you'll do is right click on the ABS white or whatever finish or material you added to your model. And you will be able to change the colors. So you just click on edit. So once again, I right clicked and then I selected edit. And then now you could play around with the colors and choose whatever you would like. And then you just click done once you're finished, and then you could click on close. So I'll give you all a few moments to play around with the different materials. And once again, if you have any questions, just let me know. All right, if you finish with your appearance, you can just click on save. And you've now created your first design using Fusion 360, using the basic features and the basic algorithm to create your designs. So you can once again apply these same steps to any models that you want to create, and it'll be incredibly helpful for the design-a-thon coming up during second semester. Now, if you are interested in having this 3D model printed or designed so that you have something tangible, there will be a 3D printing workshop in the upcoming weeks that will teach you all about 3D printing. And so I highly suggest that you attend that so that you can potentially learn the skills and be more equipped to print out your 3D models that you created today and that you'll be creating in the future, so that you can actually have tangible prototypes and models that you've designed yourself. All right, so I'll hand it back over to Shahir. But if you have any questions, just let me know in the chat and I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Great job, Lydia. So that'll be the end of our first workshop, Autodesk Fusion 360 Beginner. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. But coming up, we will be having our second workshop. It will be our Autodesk Fusion 360 Intermediate, which will be exactly next week, next Tuesday from 6:30. So be sure to look out for that and join that as well. Regarding the raffle winners, I will be looking at the results of the raffle, and I'll be sending out an email to the winner sometime by the end of this week. So whoever the winner is, just be sure to look out for that. And finally, once again, be sure to look out for our mini event 2 coming up in November, our design-a-thon coming this February, and also keep an eye out on any of the cool designs that our newly created design team will be coming up with throughout this year. That's it from me. I hope you all learned something new from this workshop, and I hope you all have a great evening.